Welcome back once again to Power Director Made Simple. Today's video is the second of this three-part series, and we will be looking at the basics of creating and modifying gradient color boards. The final video will show some of the typical uses of color boards in your video creations. Now, let's take a peek at the gradient color boards. There are two types of gradient color boards, either linear or radial. Now all that means is how the colors change, either in a straight line effect or radiating from a central point. On the timeline, I have already positioned a linear color board, Gradient 01, as well as a radial gradient board, Gradient 07, both on track 2 with a still image behind each on track 1. Let's first look at the linear gradient board, Gradient 01, which I'll click on to select. In the preview window, gradient color boards behave identical to the solid color boards. They can be moved, resized, and rotated. So just like what we did with the solid colors, let's now create a new custom gradient color board. I'll click on the icon to create a new color board and select Gradient Color. Instead of a color picker window, a new menu opens up, the Change Color Gradient window. At the very top, the default is set for linear instead of a radial gradient. We'll start with the linear gradient. And also by default, the basic gradient display will have a minimum of 2 stops. It starts with a black to white gradient as indicated by the initial 2 stops, one at each end. These 2 stops are always permanent and cannot be moved. If you notice, the default setting for a new gradient color board has a gradient direction of 270 degrees. Why the default value is not 0 degrees that is found on many of the preset color boards is a mystery that only Cyberlink knows. So let's now look closely at the display in the preview window and notice that the black to white goes from the bottom to the top, which is the 270 degree direction shown on the menu. But notice the display in the menu shows black to white going from left to right, which is a 0 degree setting. I'm going to change the gradient direction from 270 to 0. And now the preview window matches the display in the menu. You may find in actual practice that if you really want to create a new custom gradient color board, it might be best to actually start with an existing color board rather than from this default black and white one. It just seems, well, more colorful that way. I'll show you how easy that can be by canceling out of this change color window. I'm going to select the yellow gradient on the timeline and then click on the change color button above the timeline, or I could right click on the color in the timeline and bring up the same change color gradient window. Here we see the same exact change color menu with the initial 2 stops starting on the left from a light yellow and ending on the right with a darker yellow. Because the gradient direction is set to 0, the preview window matches the current menu display. Now the opacity setting in the menu applies to whatever color stop is currently chosen. For example, I'll click on the light yellow on the left side to select it. I'll then slide the opacity line to the left to about 50%. Now watch what happens in the color board in the preview window. At around 50%, the light yellow has so little opacity that the image of the flowers starts to show through. I'll move the opacity back to 100%. I'll add one more color stop near the middle by either clicking the plus sign at the top or just clicking under the display. The new stop automatically will take on the color from each stop to its left and right. I'm going to change the color of this middle stop by clicking it to select it and then clicking in the small color bar. Now this opens up the familiar color picker, giving me 4 different methods of choosing a color, including the eyedropper tool, which works on any image, even those being displayed outside of Power Director. And as shown in the previous video about solid color bars, the limitation of the eyedropper tool is that you have to be able to get to the image in order to select from it. So I'm going to cancel just for now so that I can slightly minimize Power Director to expose part of my desktop image. I'll click again on Change Color. Then I'm going to add a color stop. And then I'll click in the color bar. And then the eyedropper tool. And then I can select a color from my desktop. I'm going to click OK. And that color is now assigned to the new color stop. I'm going to add another color stop just to the right of this middle one. Notice that the color change menu includes its own eyedropper tool outside of the color picker window. I'm going to click on that one. This opens up a window showing only the imagery that is on the timeline. It includes the playhead but no time indicators. I can move the playhead and advance it through each image by dragging it from the left to the right. You cannot select from outside of this special window, such as you could with the eyedropper from the color picker. So I'm going to pick one of the purple colored flowers. I'm going to click OK, and I'm back at the gradient menu window with the color of purple now near the middle. I'm going to add one more color by clicking to the left of this middle stop. With the new stop selected, I'll click on the color bar and select white from the basic color list and then click OK. Now any of these added color stop indicators can be moved around either to the left or to the right. They can also jump over other color stop indicators. If I now were to move the gradient direction offset 90 degrees either direction from the initial setting of 0 degrees, I'm going to end up with a very interesting variation of the color board. Once satisfied with all of my additions and alterations, I now have to click on Save As if I want to make this part of my custom color gradient boards. I'm going to enter a name of Fool's Gold and click OK. And then I'm going to re-maximize the Power Director window. Now the radial gradient color boards work in nearly the same manner. I'll move the playhead over gradient 07 and select it on the timeline. As before, I can move it around and resize it in the preview window, exposing the image underneath. When I click on Change Color, a similar menu opens with 2 minor changes. The radial gradient option is chosen at the top, and the gradient direction is reduced to 5 different choices. Now this particular color board makes it difficult to see the actual radial gradient, so I'm going to make some changes to the colors so that the radial gradient becomes more pronounced. I'm going to add white just to the right of center, and another color black just to the left of center. Now you can see that the radial gradient is quite obvious. The gradient direction is currently set to center, as can be seen in the preview window. The other 4 choices place the point of origin in any of the 4 corners, such as top left, top right, bottom left, and bottom right. I'm going to reselect the center position. And once again, if I wanted to keep this as part of my custom gradient color boards, I would need to click on Save As and enter a template name. This time I'm going to enter ugly and click on OK. I can then click on OK to use the template, or cancel to continue to use the unmodified template. So there, that was all simple. As you can see, the gradient color boards are created and handled very much the same as the solid color boards. The only difference is the special menu that opens for the settings of all the gradient attributes and the ability to click on Save As and give the new color board an actual name. In the next video, we'll finally put all of this to work, and we'll see some real-life examples of how color boards can enhance your video creations. In the meanwhile, feel free to practice around on your own in creating and modifying color boards. And don't worry, any that you save to the list of custom boards can easily be removed. You won't be hurting Power Director's feelings. And as always, I thank each of you for watching. Don't forget to click on like, leave a comment or question, and make sure to hit that subscribe button.